You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all of the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the next episode of Star Trek Prodigy called Brink. I'm Dom Bettinellli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Jason Tyler. Hey, Father.
Hello.
Folks, be sure to share the podcast with your friends. That's what helps us grow this community, reach more listeners. It's by you liking and sharing and rating and reviewing and letting other people know. That helps a lot. So we really do appreciate it when you let others know about the show. And speaking of shows to let people know about, I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network that I'm sure you'll enjoy called The Secrets of Stargate, which you can find wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Stargate. So we are here to talk about Brink, which is we're getting in the home stretch of season 2 of Prodigy. So Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens in Brink?
This week we get a flashback showing how Asencia captured Wesley Crusher months ago. Meanwhile, back in the present, Janeway sends Gwyn and the kids on an undercover mission to Solemn. This is because Gwyn knows Solemn better than anyone else, and the kids are non-Starfleet, so they won't technically be breaking the Prime Directive. They're supposed to get intel on Asencia's weapons technology, and Gwyn insists that they also rescue her father, the diviner Ilthurian, who Asencia took captive last episode. When they get to the planet, they meet the present-day version of Asencia, who is actually helping Ilthurian lead an uprising on the planet, and she hates her older self and hopes she never grows into her. Good Asencia then reveals that bad Asencia has Wesley Crusher in captivity and that he's the source of her advanced tech. So Gwyn has the team split up. She and her group go to save Wesley, while Dal and another group go to save Ilthurian. Dal's group busts Ilthurian and a bunch of Valnakat dignitaries off a prison transport, and they leave Good Asencia with the dignitaries to continue the rebellion. Meanwhile, Gwyn's team breaks into where Wesley is being held, and they free him from bad Asencia's mind control, mind reading, torture, whatever device. He's delighted that they show up, and he reveals that he got captured by Asencia deliberately so that she developed the wormhole technology they need to get the protostar back to Tars Lamora. He also reveals that, in his plan, Ilthurian will overthrow Asencia and lead Solemn into a brighter future. Unfortunately, his mind is still too fritzed from the whatever device to get them back to Voyager with his space-time powers. He then realizes that he's not looking at the full group of kids. They didn't stay together, as in never separating the way he expected, and this is not part of the plan. So the future is now uncertain, and he doesn't know what's going to happen next. Things look up when they see Dal's group and Ilthurian approaching them, but they're being held captive by a bunch of robots and bad Asencia. She gloats that if it wasn't for Gwyn's ill-fated rescue attempt, she would never have learned that Ilthurian would overthrow her. So to prevent that, she points a gun at him to kill him, but Gwyn signals Dal, who tosses a portable transporter device to Wesley, who activates it. Dal yells 2 to beam up, and Ilthurian and Wesley are beamed back to Voyager, where Wesley tells Janeway that the kids are in jeopardy, and he says, "We're all in danger, and I don't know what happens next." The end.
Father, your impression of this one?
I really enjoyed this. It doesn't have the dramatic space battle scenes that we saw in Ascension, but we do have, the drama of characters being captured and the whole issue of Wesley being captured intentionally. I thought was an interesting take on things because it shows on the one hand sort of his foreknowledge and his power as a traveler, but then we see the limits of that when our heroes split up, and this is just a variable he's basically not accounted for. He doesn't know what's going to happen next.
It's always good when you don't know how the story's going to end. It makes it more exciting for the rest of us. Jimmy, how about you?
Yeah, I enjoyed this one. I also very much appreciated that Wesley got deliberately captured. That's nice and timey-wimey of, I got captured so she could develop the technology that you're going to need to pull this off. It also meant a notable sacrifice on Wesley's part because that whatever device he's in is not fun. So he's been undergoing torture in order to get the pieces on the chessboard that the kids are going to need to use. However, he also failed to clarify exactly what he meant when he told them to stay together, and that causes the problem he's in now. So, ambiguous dialogue that can be interpreted more than one way by the kids and is to create new plot complications. I also like how young Asencia is good, and she's going to have a key part to play going forward. It's also nice that young Ilthurian is good, and so I like all that. I also like that Jamila, the actress who plays Asencia,
Jamil,
it's nice that she gets to play a good version of her character finally after being a villain for so long.
Yeah, she's got that British accent, so that makes her even better villain, because in American shows and movies, British villains are always better. I'm not sure why, but we've kind of settled on that in America. I liked this one. It is different from the last one. Had some issues. We'll get into that, but in general, we advanced things pretty well. The whole Wesley Crusher plot is very Doctor Who. It's the sort of thing the Doctor would have done, which is deliberately get caught and tortured. And give the technology to the bad guy, because the bad guy is going to create the means of his own demise. We've seen that over and over and over again. In fact, wasn't that the plot of the most recent season of the 15th Doctor? He basically let the good guy win to his own demise as a result. I don't know, maybe it wasn't let him win, but in any case, I mean, let the bad guy win, but I don't think it was he let him win. In any case, it's very Doctor Who-ish. I appreciate the homage to the Doctor. One of the things that kind of gets me with the premise of this episode, they have to send the kids in because they're not Starfleet, which
true. They're also kids,
right? But also they kind of are. They're on they've been serving on a Starfleet ship. They're in the Starfleet Prep Academy. It's such a legalistic distinction, and at this point, why does the Prime Directive even matter in the sense of Solomon has declared war on the Federation?
Yeah. Dom, have you ever considered that the Prime Directive may be morally indefensible and completely impractical?
Yes. we have discussed that actually on this show in the past. It's become, as we all know, it's become the prop device. It's just, it's a script device that we use whenever we need to have a bit of drama that we can, wield. And so it's kind of a bit silly to invoke it here, but it's become very silly in general.
And it seems wasn't part of the idea though that the Federation didn't want to be seen as the ones starting the war. They didn't want to fire the first shot maybe by having some Starfleet commandos say go down and do what the kids ultimately wind up doing. Yeah,
although the Rev 1, I think, it fired the first shot with that cursor. That's right. Yeah, the logical issue. But you're right. I mean, the whole point is we need to get the kids onto
Solomon.
Yeah, and so we just create an easy way in a 21-minute episode to get him down there. I get that. But
I like Jenkum's line when he thinks he's being captured. Starfleet disavows us.
Yeah.
It's very Mission Impossible.
Don't shoot. Starfleet disavows us. I know. That's great.
That was very subtle. It's interesting, the opening where we see the flashback, because since in the last episode we saw Wesley had been captured, they couldn't show us him get captured because that would have ruined the surprise in that episode. So now we flash back to him getting captured. And when I first saw this, I said, oh, wow, that's a bit of hubris on Wesley's part to just show up and think that, he's going to be fine. He'll be able to just march right in, and she captures him right off the bat. Yeah. Wow, that's pride goeth before the fall.
Yeah, Asencia is, so this flashback, they give us a star date, but then they helpfully tell us several months ago.
Right.
Which is like good, because I have no idea what the star dates are at this point.
Yep.
But Asencia is doing some kind of experiments with time because, it's key to the situation, and she saw something that made her want to figure out how to use time more effectively. And she's having a home improvement moment where she wants more power. And then Wesley shows up and warns her off it. So she zaps him and takes him prisoner. But it's, it does come across as, Wesley's being a bit hubristic, but then it's all really just part of his plan. And so it works out.
Yeah. I'm glad that it was not him just being stupid and walking into a trap. So as far as Voyager goes, Jellicoe's now on board with the Asencia's time technology is now a greater threat than anything. So we've got to put the whole Protostar back to Tars Lamora thing on the shelf until we deal with Asencia and the time tech. So they send them off to Solemn and send them undercover, which is kind of weird because they're instantly recognizable. Like I could get Gwyn kind of blending in.
Yeah.
But the rest of them do not blend.
Well, they don't, but they do give them an invisibility shield, which they say is like a portable cloaking device. And so they're supposed to stay under that, but of course they're not gonna.
Right.
I was annoyed by that one because it doesn't mask sound, and like there's this bubble traveling around, and like you would bump into people, would walk right into you. They wouldn't know to avoid you. It's just. Yeah, but it was also like, again, I've said this last episode, Chekhov's cloaking device, because that it has to fail at some point so that they can be seen.
What would have been better is the cloaking device, the personal cloaking device that they had in Star Trek Insurrection, where Data is just individually cloaked.
Right.
Yeah, which they had that technology by that time, so. But I mentioned before how Majel resigns from Starfleet to join them so that she can, not violate the Prime Directive by doing it. And she gives the reasoning because Wesley said we need to stay together, which conveniently reminds us that Wesley told them all to stay together when they don't. So they do beam down, and they encounter the young Asencia when they go to Ilthurian's house. I do like this, and you mentioned this, Jimmy, in your over impression, this idea that the younger versions of our enemies from last season and this season too are the good guys.
So youth and innocence go together, and old age and corruption go together. So what does that say about us?
I'm still young at heart. But it is interesting to, that people are not intrinsically evil or even intrinsically good in the sense of that we only we are oriented toward one or the other from our creation or that sort of thing, but that
so you're not a Calvinist.
Exactly. But it's our choices and the circumstances we live through that guide us on a path, and so we see that Asencia of the young Asencia has not gone through the same things that the older Asencia has and made the same choices. She's not merely the bad Asencia is not merely the victim of her circumstances, but she's made choices that have led her to become the way she is. And same thing with the diviner, who made choices based on the circumstances he was in that led him to become who he was. And so I like that they're kind of playing that out here. That is a very good message. I don't love message shows, but it's an intrinsic message that they're showing here, which is that we are the products of our choices
and our circumstances.
And circumstances. That's right. Yeah. So I do like that.
One thing that I like, speaking of character choices, is, and I mentioned this last episode, is Dal has grown remarkably. So he, in this episode, Gwyn is team leader, and he just takes a back seat and lets her run the show, and does not try to force himself into situations. He respects her judgment. There's this moment where they're down there in part to get Ilthurian, and then they learn about Wesley, and it's like, we don't have time to get both of them. So which one are we going to save? And Gwyn's solution is we split up and save them both. And Dal's like, okay. And she assigns him to lead one team. She takes the other team. I thought it was interesting that that she swapped who was going to get which target. because you'd think she's most interested in her dad, and so she would lead the team to get Ilthurian. But instead, she assigns Dal to do that, which is, I think, good so that you're not too close to the situation of the team you're on. You'll get better decision making that way. And which is, I don't, they didn't have her say this. They didn't explore why she did this, but it's better to have some degree of distance from the target that you're trying to rescue in order to think of the best way to rescue the target. Right. And not have your emotions competing, which would be a real mature and intelligent thing to do. Also, it's a big sign of her trust in in Dal that she assigns him to go get her dad.
Yeah, they've really developed, and their connection between each other has really developed maturity. We've used that several times, but it is true. I'm really enjoying in this season better than I did last season, especially at this point in the season. Last season was fine, but I really feel like this season really has been better written. The characters are better. I'm less annoyed by the dumb things that they decide to do at this point. They're making mature decisions that are based on logic. Now, it turns out that Gwyn's decision here turns out not to work out because it's the wrong
Wesley's fault.
Right. And she's gonna take the blame on herself, but it also is true. Sometimes you make the best decision you can with the understanding of the circumstances you're in at the time, and you do what you can, and it's not really your fault. It's just the way it is, and that's kind of where she is in this, and I think that's fine. I do like that. At first, I thought we were going to have a classic train heist, where they have to board the train while it's, going at speed. And we've seen this in many science fiction things, whether it's a Firefly or Star Wars or whatever. But nope. In fact, it's surprisingly easy how they get Ilthurian off the train and the council members and rescue them. I was like, wow, that was surprisingly easy. What are they going to do now to pick up the rest of the time of the episode? And so we saw. But I thought that was an interesting decision to make that less of the plot. We had these two the split plot, and then we just kind of capped that one quickly so we could concentrate on the other one. So I thought that was interesting.
One thing that I thought was a bit problematic, it didn't ruin the show for me or anything, which I really enjoyed, but at the end so they have this one personal site transporter device with them instead of giving one to each of the kids. Right. Which is dumb. Yep. And that creates a moment where they split up the teams, and Dal is like, we only have one transporter device. And she's like, oh, we can hitch a ride home with Wesley because he's got those space-time powers. And I thought, oh, well, that's nice. It's still stupid that each kid doesn't have their own transporter as well as transporters for the targets they're getting. Yeah. But
didn't they say something though about only being able to use the transporter once without being detected?
Yeah. But
so if they had multiple, once the first one was used, the others would be, I don't know. Yeah. It's still hard to.
Still, even if they know, how do they know where the other people are?
Yeah.
If one kid beams up, okay, we just got a blip, but that doesn't tell you where everybody is or how many there are. But then at the end, Gwyn, as Asencia is holding a gun on him and pointing the gun at Ilthurian, Gwyn has this line that she uses to cryptically signal Dal to use the transporter device. And I'm thinking that line is way too cryptic. I'm afraid I don't remember what it was, but I don't see how he could possibly have deduced, throw the transporter device to Wesley, wait for him to activate it, and then yell 2 to beam up. So it's kind of overcomplicated. Also, if this is like some unusual device, how do you know Wesley's even going to recognize it? To activate it. And then there's the 2 to beam up issue. And I've kind of thought about that. How is the automatic device going to know which 2? And
why 2?
And that's my other question, but I can kind of get that based on the fact that they're surrounded by their enemies, and maybe you don't want to bring the enemies up to the ship with you. So you can't, unless you can stop and give a list of names. Still, I think this is a flaw in the writing, because if there's an AI that's apparently determining who to beam up, it ought to be able to identify who needs to be beamed up here. And even if it just took all of the biological life forms, it would take Asencia up with you, and you've got your enemy in your control.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, even if they're armed, you can. The transporters usually disarm people and the weapons and that sort of stuff. Yeah, that was a bit of a flaw. I was thinking the same thing too. Like, why two? Why send Wesley and Ilthurian of all people? I mean, I get getting Wesley off the board so that Asencia can't continue to use him, but
And
why Ilthurian?
Well, because she's about to kill Ilthurian, which will further cause damage to the timeline, because Wesley says he needs to take over it after she falls from power.
Sure. Okay, I get that. But but nobody else. That was, I thought that was a bit odd.
I mean, the non-diegetic reason is so that the kids are still stuck on the planet next episode. We got to solve that situation.
That's true. The other thing was Wesley's decision to give Asencia this information, this destructive information that allows her to build this time tech and this fleet of ships, purely to get her to develop the wormhole tech that they need to get the protostar to Tars Lamora,
which will undo this whole timeline.
Yeah. And it's like, that's brinksmanship. I mean, that is, man, that is again, worthy of the Doctor. Like the one wrong step, if this goes wrong, which it has, it could potentially destroy this timeline, destroy everything. Which maybe leads to, this is as serious and dangerous as he said earlier in the earlier episode.
Unless go ahead, Father.
Well, he said earlier on something like, basically all the other travelers had given up on this universe or whatever, right? That's how bad the situation was. So I guess it's bad enough that he decides to take this really desperate move of getting himself captured and all the stuff that comes from that.
He's definitely, he's doing what Mr. Spock referred to as cowboy diplomacy here. But there's a dialogue problem, and dialogue problems are not a big deal because they can fix them with a line of dialogue if they chose to. But unless Wesley's playing another mind game on us, he told us before there is only one timeline where we survive. There's one set of things that has to happen. He's looked at all the other possibilities and none of them work. And now we're not in that scenario. So we should be in a doomed situation at this point. Either that or he was wrong about there being only one way to fix this.
Yeah, and in fact, he says, the future is uncertain. I am lost. Yeah. And so it in a way, he's saying this is one of the versions of the timeline that I didn't anticipate, that I didn't see, which I, in a situation where you have every possible timeline from every possible decision in all of those intervening moments, I can't imagine how you would be able to see them all. But, in this case, you have to wave a hand and accept it.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, this whole, like, I told you not to separate. I thought you meant team spirit. I thought that was funny. And I mean, well, if you meant like physically stay in the same place at all times.
Yeah. Never be out of each other's presence. That's what he should have said.
Yeah. Which is, they have been out of each other's presence. Last episode, they were all over the place.
Exactly.
So how would that, if they had known that and taken it seriously, how would that have affected all the intervening actions that they took?
It would have made it harder for the writers.
It certainly would have made to be inside the story. It would have made them probably lose the battle against the ship last episode. That so maybe this was meant to be this way. Let's see. Any other notes on this one, Father?
No, actually, I as much as I enjoyed this, I did not take many notes, and so don't have anything else to add on this.
I did enjoy, by the way, the puppetry of the guard that they knocked out. That was kind of fun.
Oh, yeah.
But that was the one thing I just thought of. Jimmy, how about you? Any other further notes on this one?
The only thing I had was when they first beam down to the planet and they're walking around under the invisibility cloak, Jankum trips and falls on the ground, and he like trips on a rock and falls on the ground, and like part of him pokes out of the invisibility shield and stuff, and he gets back up. And that just struck me because I had, for the first time in 20 years, I was stepping over a barrier in a parking lot a few weeks ago and tripped and went down and, braced myself with my hands, especially my right arm. And wow, my right arm was sore it's still a little sore, but man, it was sore for a week afterwards. And so as soon as I saw Jankum go down, it's like, ouch, that can be very painful. But the two mitigating factors: one, he's a lot shorter than I am. And two, he's got a metal right arm. So
that helps.
Comes in handy for all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And he's young and bounces back. And we're old and we do not bounce anymore. So, yes, thank you. All right, so that should do it for this time. We do want to take a moment now to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Lenny B., Rachel F., David K., Sean S., and Jason G. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it for us this time. We would love to know what you think of Brink. You can comment on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to trek@sqpn.com. Visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/discord, or watch us on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia and leave a comment there after liking and subscribing. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next episode of Prodigy called Touch of Grey. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, and live long and prosper.
Father Jason Tyler, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, we save everyone.